Welcome to Silicon Valley Asian Business Talk. Discussion topic: My Entrepreneurship Journey.
Hello, everyone. This is Roger Chen from University of San Francisco Center for Business Studies and Innovation, Asia Pacific. Welcome, BV Jagadeesh, and also thank you for joining our interview program. Would you please briefly introduce yourself?
Yes. First of all, Roger, thank you so much for having me as part of this. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be associated with University of San Francisco and then be part of this and then share my views on my entrepreneur journey to everyone. I came to this country in 1982, and I actually had already finished my master's degree in India itself, and I had worked for a couple of years. And I happened to just get a job in a Silicon Valley high technology company. And since then, pretty much I have worked all my life until I started my own in 1993. I pretty much had worked in mostly startup companies. So I was sort of fortunate to work with different kinds of startup companies so that even though I was an engineer for many, many years, I got to actually see different aspect of building the product and then bringing the product to the market as well. And that helped me a lot as I started my own first company end of 1993, which is Exodus Communications, where we pioneered the whole concept of internet data centers, where we became the infrastructure for pretty much any of the internet companies that you can think of. Right, whether it's Amazon or eBay or Microsoft, MSN or Google or whoever it is, for every one of those companies, we became the backend infrastructure. And we were at that time, we were one of the very early ones to have what you see today as the AWS cloud. So we had version 1 of the AWS cloud that we used to offer to our customers. And the company, we went public in 1998. And company became, too big. So I left the company in 2000 to start another company called NetScaler, which actually solved the problem for this hyper growth that the data centers were experiencing because of the server inefficiency. So we came up with a technology that addressed the inefficiency of the servers and created the next generation of the load balancers, which sat in front of the web servers. And we dramatically reduced almost like 10:1 in terms of the number of servers that people used to deploy before to people deployed with the NetScaler. So that reduced tremendous data center footprint consumption, power consumption, and even people and everything, right? So dramatically we help to reduce the overall cost of running a data center for corporations. And that company, as you know, after 9/11, the entire market sort of collapsed. So we'll discuss that a little bit later. But eventually we came back and we built a flagship product, the NetScaler load balancers, which then started to do extremely well. And in 2005, Citrix came forward to acquire us. And we became part of Citrix. And I was with Citrix for several more years to make sure that Citrix properly absorbed this product and then brought it to all the customers. So I'm happy to say today, NetScaler is almost like $1 billion in revenue for Citrix. And it's a great sense of satisfaction to have created a company and a product like a NetScaler. And so for the last 10, 12 years or so, I've been primarily focused as an angel investor. And I'm working with the next generation of entrepreneurs, mostly in B2B and enterprise infrastructure, software, SaaS companies, and business to business kind of companies that are solving problems for the businesses. So that's what I've been focused on. And about 40% of my time, I spend on nonprofit organizations, both in the US as well as in India. I kind of enjoy. So about 60% I spend on capitalistic opportunities, investing in these next generation entrepreneurs, and about 40% of my time I spend on the nonprofit, where I can take the experience that I get from this and the wealth that is generated back into helping the underprivileged kind of children, mostly in the education sector.
Discussion topic: Uncertainties and best practices in product market fit.
Looking at your kind of entrepreneurship journey, my first question basically relating to the very early stage of the startup companies, where they kind of search for what we call the product market fit, the market, the customers. So you have done several successful startup companies. You have helped many of these early stage companies. So what's your observation about the typical mistakes, or the good practice, or the rules that startup company to follow as they search for so-called product market fit?
Yeah. This is actually one of the most challenging aspects of building a startup company into a successful company. And even in the product market fit, by the way, there are several journeys that the entrepreneur has to go through. There is an early market adoption, and there is the exponential growth part of it. So both are aligned to some extent, but at the same time, you have to be very watchful as to the kind of product that you need to bring out in order to go through that exponential growth. So having said that, the biggest challenge of the product market fit, right, is obviously a entrepreneur starts with a hypothesis of a problem that exists in the market, and his or her ability to solve that problem to the customer. So that's the starting point of any startup company. There is a hypothesis, and you start with the hypothesis, and I know to a great extent how to address and solve that problem. And lots of things can change during the process. So one is the product may get delayed substantially because of the complexity of the product. Other one is competition that you are not even aware, because everybody is startup. Somebody may release the product similar to yours way ahead of time and then get the entire momentum that you probably should have got, right? Kind of like, if you see what happened with Google and ChatGPT, right? Even at that large company situations, you bump into these issues. The third one is that the people themselves may fall apart for various reasons, right? The founders may fall apart, or some key engineers that you have or key architects that you have may fall apart, which could cause a tremendous delay or not build a good quality product, right? These are the challenges that you have. Now, let's assume things go well, you build the product, and based on the hypothesis, you start bringing that product to the market. And if the problem still exists the way you had envisioned, then obviously customers would love your product because you have been engaged in a conversation during the product development cycle. It's not like you started the company and then you produce the company and you produce the product. And it's not like there is a big gap of conversation with the customer. So that's the biggest mistake anybody can make. So a smart founder is the one is constantly engaged with the customer during the entire product development cycle. And if you are smart enough, you should also bring some of these customers as a customer advisory board to sort of give you constant feedback as the market is changing, as situation is changing with the customer, so that you can incorporate, many of these things, right? So let's assume things go well and you bring the product out and then you bring the product to the customers, and then you start doing the proof of concept with several of these customers that you are engaged with the conversation. So in order for a customer to ultimately pay a check to buy the product has to solve a problem. And the problem it has to solve has to be, what we call as a must-have or a painkiller kind of a product. It cannot be a nice-to-have kind of a product. And number three is, if it is fitting into a customer environment, you better have thought through the entire ecosystem of how this product actually sits in, right? So, for example, if I'm building an infrastructure product, like a NetScaler kind of a product, right? I take the product and I must know what are all the other components that exist, and do I fit in smoothly into that environment?
Yeah.
Okay. So that means there could be a Cisco router, there could be a Juniper router, there could be an Arista switch, all of these things that exist as part of the ecosystem. And I have to fit into that ecosystem very seamlessly. And many a times, especially when you are building core infrastructure, mission critical kind of a product, a lot of entrepreneurs would go to the customer and say, hey, replace your existing infrastructure with my product. I can do it. Almost 99.9999% of the time, customer will not agree to it. Which means you need to be strategic enough to go solve a particular pain sitting along with the other products. And that is the pain that is very important for the customer to be solved.
Discussion topic: making customers adopt mission critical products.
I'll give you my own example of
that'd be
NetScaler.
great. Great.
Yeah. So NetScaler, we started with the hypothesis back in 1999 when we started the company to address this whole, as I mentioned earlier, the server capacity to be which is inefficiently being used because of certain protocol issues. We said we will offload that so that the server's utilization dramatically comes down, so that you don't need to deploy. Meaning, if for 1 million users who are going to come and access the web, right? If I needed, let's say, 20 servers for 1 million users, with a NetScaler, you probably can get away with maybe 3 or 4 servers.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's how dramatically you can reduce the number of servers. So that's the hypothesis in which we built the product. Now, what happened? 9/11 got hit, and the entire market basically collapsed. And the growth curve of the traffic, which is growing at this exponential curve, it actually started to drop. So in fact, when I went and when I was talking to various customers saying that, hey, we have the product, we can now reduce the number of servers for you. So some of these customers, they showed the chart that their IT people had told them as to this is how the growth curve is going to be. So you better build the infrastructure for that growth curve. And now post 9/11, the whole thing is like falling down. So in fact, some people said, what's the point in saving the servers, right? I want to actually get rid of some servers. So if you want some servers, please take them home. So the whole hypothesis in which we started to build this product, market completely shifted.
Yeah.
So this is where, if you have entrepreneurs who are smart, who have the ability to rethink as to what can I do with this technology. So that is when we went back and then we built a complete load balancer as a next generation of load balancer, where we not only saved the server footprint, but we saved on the bandwidth. And we were the first one to provide the SSL security at gigabit capacity. So essentially, now we have built a new product. So we took about 9 months to go and rebuild this product, and then we introduced that product to the market. Now, when you go to sell this as a load balancer, there are already established players that are in the market. So there is F5 from Seattle, there is Cisco, which had a load balancer, and then there are a bunch of other companies that had this similar, and they were all fairly well established in the market. So if I go and tell Mr. Customer, I have this next generation load balancer, please replace your F5 or your Cisco and then put a NetScaler, what does the customer do? He'll just show you the door. Right? Because it's such a mission critical product, because if a load balancer fails, my entire server farm will fail. That means millions of people who are accessing the servers, right, will start seeing a blank screen. So we had to be smart enough, and we said, Mr. Customer, you don't need to turn on, you don't need to remove your load balancer. You insert our product on top of your existing load balancer. And I will give you all these complementary solutions that your existing load balancer doesn't have, which offers all this value. And we figured out how to configure our NetScaler along with NF5, along with the Cisco, along with other products. And that gave an opportunity for us to insert, if this is an F5, then we sat on top of F5. Okay. And now what happens? 6 months later, customer is happy. And now he starts opening up more with you, saying that, hey, you know what? I've been asking these vendors for these functionalities, right? That they did not even bother to respond back. Now that I know your product well, and I've already used this product for 3 years or 4 years, I've completely depreciated this product, right? And I like you guys. Let me turn on the load balancing function in your product as well.
Wow. Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, I see. That's a great point.
Yeah. So this is the kind of scenario that an entrepreneur needs to envision ahead of time and make the transition of your product into the customer environment as smooth as possible. So that means eliminating the frictions.
Yeah, that's a great point. So actually, I think I see from your story, there are two very critical points. One is you really try to solve the major pain points, and in this case, the major pain points that must have is kind of multiple functions, multiple pain points, to make it truly valuable. I think the second point, which is also very, very valuable, is you have to consider customers' adoption costs. Many times, even if you solve their problem, if the adoption costs are very high, they will still reject your products.
Exactly.
Discussion topic: managing customer requests to build right products.
I was thinking from startup or founder's perspective in this kind of very early stage searching about the product. I like your idea, kind of having customers to sit on your advisory board to give you continuous feedback so it can help you adjust. Any other things startup company can do to mitigate this kind of a pain and uncertainty as they navigate and search for different product directions?
Yeah, especially for the product market fit.
Yeah. As I search for it. Yeah.
So the second key thing is as you bring the product to the market, it is not uncommon that your product will fall short by certain functionality and features. As you introduce this product to the customer, customer will ask a certain amount of other functionality that needs as part of that. Now, if it is a very process-centric product manager, Then the product manager will say, hey, you got to wait until the next release happens. And customer is not going to wait that long. And in the early stages of your winning a customer, every customer that you win is very important. Every customer. That means you need to build an organization that is tuned to make each customer happy rather than sticking to your process. Okay. So this is where an entrepreneurial product manager is important to understand, and an entrepreneurial VP engineering is important to make sure that, because if I don't win this customer, I may not even exist.
Yeah. Good point.
What is the point in building my next product 6 months down the road if I don't even have a customer, right? So that's why what I used to do to my VP engineering, I used to tell in my staff meetings that you break down your functionalities that you are developing as part of a release of the software into 3 different categories. First category is, what are you doing from the feedback that you're receiving from customers? Okay, point number 1. Point number 2 is, with respect to competition, right? Where do we stand? So what are all the important things? Because customer will say, hey, this product does this ABC, and I must have that thing. So if you don't have it, then it's very hard for you to break in, right? So that's number 2. Number 3 is, from our own perspective, what is it that you are working from an innovative angle? Meaning, which is the one that gives me the edge when I take this product to the market? So my VP engineering, every week in the staff meeting, has to put out these 3 columns. One is a column that is customer requests, features. Second one is competition, to be at par with competition or better with competition. Third one is your own innovation. So now, depending on where you are in the product release cycle, right, you can fine tune what percentage of your time is spent where. So when you release the product, you want your product to be used by more number of customers. And that means there's more feedback coming from the customer, which means the engineering must be spending more time on the customer feedback to very quickly turn around and fix these functionalities so that customers continues to be excited with the product and deploy that in their environment. So this is the balance that the company has to do, especially during the early days. And you cannot do this forever, right? But this is very, very, very essential during that initial product market fit.
Actually, thank you. This is great, because in my class, strategy class, we did talk about these 3 perspectives to evaluate a new product, new strategy, which is customer perspective, competitor perspective, and a company perspective. And you explained it so well. And but I do have a follow-up question. Let's say maybe that's not a major question when a startup company does not have many customers. In other words, when you have multiple customers, but they kind of give you feedback, lead the company to opposite direction or to conflicting directions. Have you encountered that problem, or is this major problem for maybe not for the early stage of a product market fit because you don't have many customers?
Absolutely. This is a major problem. If you don't follow certain discipline, then you could pretty much become a consulting company. You see what I mean? Because
by BV, actually, for BV, for the audience to better understand, when you say becoming a consulting company, means you do not have standardized offering, everything's customized. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct. Exactly. So you have one-off feature that customer A wants, another customer wants another one-off feature, right? So this is where the smartness of the product management, the founder, and the VP engineering all come into play. That when a customer gives a feedback about this is what I want, then you need to assess to say, is this part of my roadmap? Is this something more number of customers would need? Is this something that is going to significantly increase the value of my product? Right? You got to make that assessment and make it a priority to go do it. If it is all these one-off kind of a thing, then you need to, in a very clever way, answer the customer back saying that, we'll put this in the roadmap, and then over a period of time, we will execute on this. Provided, if it's a very large customer, and this customer says, hey, here is $1 million deal if you do this. If you don't do this, I'm not giving you this order. So then maybe on a one-off basis, you may need to do that. Yeah.
Like
so my VP engineering, was also a very smart product management guy. And every time when the sales used to come and ask for these kind of one-off functions, his next question was, what is the revenue you're going to generate if I do this for you? Commit to me. What is the revenue, right? Then the sales guy has to think. Yeah. But having said that, right, it's very important from a leadership perspective to build a culture that talks to multiple departments, right? The department heads in a very cohesive manner rather than in a very confrontational manner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because moment it starts to get into confrontational manner, then what I have observed in various companies is it starts to become political. And sales guy is finger pointing at engineering guy, and sales guy is finger pointing at marketing guy. Engineering is finger pointing at sales guy, or engineering is finger pointing at someone else, right? So there is constant finger pointing, and everybody goes into this defensive mode to avoid that finger pointing rather than solving the problem. Because in a startup company, everybody's mindset is exactly the same thing, right? To keep the company move forward. Every day, the company has to be moving forward. It is not about who is right, who is wrong. It's about we as a company, are we right or are we wrong? So that's the culture, that's the attitude that needs to be built into every leader's mindset. And the way I used to handle that was anytime I see this friction happening, I used to bring the two leaders into my room because I know everybody is saying it in the best interest of the company. It is just that you misunderstand the statement. So bring them to the room and have an open conversation, and then figure out how to reprioritize if we have.
Discussion topic: growing from early customers to mainstream market.
Typically, after a company kind of figure out or identify the initial product market fit, as you mentioned earlier, typically the company enters the scaling up or growing stage, right? So, but of course, that scaling up is a very abstract concept. So, what's your kind of observations or views that startup company need to be aware to manage or deal with this kind of a growth phase, avoiding mistakes and lessons? Yeah.
So this is the second phase of the product market fit. Right? If you, I'm sure you know this, Jeffrey Moore's Crossing Up the Chasm.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies, they create that first product, which is successful in the early adoption of the market. And since they don't prepare themselves, then you don't cross the chasm at all. You end up actually falling through the cliff. And I had several of my companies, right, which kind of went through challenges like this. And the right way to solve this problem is once your cash flow is happening from this early adoption, and I'll give you several examples. I'll give you an example of my own NetScaler, and I'll give you an example from Nutanix, which is one of the companies that I had seed funded, so that people actually understand what exactly that means and crossing of the chasm, right? So in case of NetScaler, our early adopters were customers who needed performance and speed of response of their applications. So a lot of our features, functionalities, marketing, positioning, right, all of these things were centered around high performance and making sure this application response time becomes faster because of all these technologies that we had. So because of that, we won all these internet-centric companies. We won Google, we won MSN, Yahoo, eBay. All of these customers were the early adoption kind of customers. Now, that market at the end of the day is going to get saturated, right? Yeah, you can do maybe $30 million, $50 million revenue per year. But beyond that, if you want to grow this to be $1 billion company, you have to break into the mainstream enterprise. So when you go into the mainstream enterprise, the requirements of the mainstream enterprise is lot more. In fact, they don't even care about performance. Right? It's completely contrast. So there's a ton of these functionalities because of the applications that they're running, because of the environment that they have. All these things, you need to start investing your time and resources in developing the next market that I'm going to go after. But at the same time, you don't take your eyeball off of this first product, which is your cash cow. Right. Because startup companies, you'll start with, like in our own case, we started with 0, and then year 1 we had like $2 million in revenue. Year 2 we had $10 million and 20 and 40 and 80 and all of that. So between 40 and 80 is where we started to also offer the product to the enterprises. But so after 80, almost 60 was coming from these early adoption, right? So that because we didn't take our eyeball off of the first set of customers, but at the same time, we now started to position the product for the enterprise with all the functionality that is required. So let me take an example of Nutanix. Nutanix early adoption, Nutanix is a storage company, right? And they were the innovators of this so-called concept called the hyperconvergence. Hyperconvergence is on the same server, you have compute, you have storage, and you have networking. But primarily it's a compute and the storage, right? Because in the old architecture, you used to have cluster of compute servers and you used to have cluster of storage servers. So Nutanix, through this whole Google file system, GFS concept, they built using commodity servers. You keep on adding servers, your compute power increases and your storage also increases, right? So the first application they saw as an early adoption was the virtual desktop. So a lot of corporations that use call centers in other countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, India, all these places, they use these call centers. To the call centers, they don't want to give complete access to their entire network, corporate network. So that's why you give this virtual desktop. So everything is like completely controlled. You know who is accessing. You can turn on a person, turn off a person like this. So that application took off very well because a lot of these enterprises, they were using call centers in all these different countries. And Nutanix became a beautiful product for that requirement. Now, when you want to penetrate into the rest of the enterprise, you need functionalities associated with Microsoft Outlook, Oracle database, right? Exchange server, and all kind of Salesforce, all kinds of mainstream applications that is running in your data center. You have to have solution for that.
Mm.
So what Nutanix did was the cash cow for them was the virtual desktop, and then they slowly started to transition into the mainstream. And day one, if they had gone and said, hey, replace a NetApp or an EMC and then use my product, customer would have shown the door. But they solved this problem for the virtual desktop beautifully, and they built the confidence. Customer built the confidence with the company. And then when they came and said, look, I've got a solution now for Exchange Server. Customer said, okay, let's try that out. So that is how the revenues grew from $50-100 million into multi-billion dollars for Nutanix.
Discussion topic: lessons, how to grow from startups to companies.
Any other kind of lessons you observed or you experienced as companies scale up or manage the growth phase?
Yeah, so as the company starts to scale up, the systems, processes, a lot of these things should start coming in place, right? So like a customer service organization. So meaning initially, let's assume the customer service, customer support is mostly driven by engineering. Okay, you cannot continue to do that, right? You now have to start investing in real customer support, because if you go and win, let's say, a Fortune 500 kind of company, and the support they need, 24/7 support across wherever you call from, and they would have deployed your products across the globe, right? So which means if you don't provide that 24/7 support and a clear process, a methodology, that means the company needs to invest in all these systems and processes, right? You cannot continue to operate like in this ad hoc startup mode. And what happens is, I've seen this in the companies, employees are not used to the discipline day one.
Okay.
And now you start putting them into this discipline mode, meaning, hey, when you write the code, you have to document the whole thing. And typically for an engineer, documentation is the most boring part. Right? But as a company, it's very important that these things are documented so that if you quit tomorrow, right, I don't have to be calling you to come back and consult with me.
Yeah, we call
The
it
next guy
institutional memory. Yeah.
Exactly. Right? I mean, I had, for example, I had a inside salesperson, and this person, everything she used to do on a piece of paper, all the leads, 100% of the leads that she was, and she was the number one inside salesperson that we had, right? Now, as the company is transitioning from startup into the mainstream, we got Salesforce, and we asked her to start putting all that stuff into systems and then start documenting. And she's like, man, allow me to go and close sales, right? Why are you guys torturing me? This is not productive. Yeah. So that's the challenge. And I think as the company is moving, right, if you start bringing these systems ahead of time so that it should not become a torture to the employees, and that helps from the scaling perspective.
Yeah.
And luckily today, right, unlike in the past, because at Exodus, for example, when we implemented a CRM system from Siebel, we had to pay for the software license $1 million. And implementation by KPMG was $4 million. Can you imagine? And today, you know, I can kick off a HubSpot or a Salesforce for $30-40 per person, almost overnight. Yeah. So if I have 10 salespeople, I'm paying like $400 a month, which is not that bad. I don't need to invest a significant amount of money and time in building these kind of things.
Discussion topic: when to invest to grow the business.
You have seen kind of issues, the pace of the investment, the pace of the spending money, resources to formalize a lot of internal operations or hiring more people, and versus whether the product is kind of the demand is enough to match the resource investment. Because I've seen some companies, they kind of invest too much ahead of the demand that end up with a bigger problem. But of course, you have to invest to prepare for the scaling up. So have you seen kind of companies facing this kind of a, left foot, right foot, and how much the left foot will lead the right foot, things like that, the investment demand, those kind of issues to balance it?
So there are two challenges that one needs to be aware of. One is, before you found this product market fit, and by the way, one of my friends beautifully defined, when do you really start scaling up your sales and marketing organization is when you have found that product market fit. And the definition of the product market fit at that stage, when you start to scale the organization, is when a ordinary salesperson in your organization, right, can sell to an ordinary customer.
Good point.
Not a very technically qualified customer, right? An ordinary customer and an ordinary sales guy, which means he or she should be able to understand your presentation, your case studies, your target market, all of these things. And he or she should know how to present your company, the value proposition, all of that stuff to an ordinary customer who can also understand what your product is doing. If you can get to that stage, that means you have really hit the product market fit, meaning you have really built the product with a great user interface, with easy to install, easy to communicate, and the value proposition is well understood, all of these things. So that means the preparation to get to that stage where you really start to invest in sales and marketing heavily is all these step-by-step aspect of making the product very easy to use, better user experience, better user interface, right? Better management tools, all of these different aspects on the product, and understanding the value proposition and messaging that properly, creating a PowerPoint presentation that tells the story properly, right? All this back-end work, combination of product and product marketing and product management, doing their work properly. And then if you invest in sales and marketing, then your sales cycle will be a lot less, your sales productivity will be high, right? And your unit economics really starts to look better. So this is ideal. A lot of entrepreneurs, they get excited when they see 10 customers using the product, and some VP sales joins them, and this VP sales will create this spreadsheet. And by the way, I know several companies that have gone down because of this mistake, right? So the VP sales will give a spreadsheet saying that, look, if I hire 10 salespeople, 10 sales teams, each sales team is going to produce $2 million a year. That means year one, I'm going to have $20 million from 10 salespeople. If I make that into 20, I'm going to have $40 million in revenues. So why don't we just go ahead and then start building the sales force, right? Now, when you build the sales force, whatever, 10 sales team, each sales team typically would cost $500,000.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So if I go put a sales team in New York, a technical guy and a sales guy selling to the enterprise, it's going to cost me minimum $500,000.
Yeah.
And if the company has not produced enough leads, if the company does not have all the story well created, what the sales team that is sitting in New York is just thumb twisting. And company is losing $500,000.
Right.
And you have 20 teams, right? That's $10 million right there. It's gone.
Right.
So when you raise money, this money is being used completely inefficiently. And so many companies have gone under because of that mistake. So a right entrepreneur needs to really invest in sales and marketing once you start seeing this product market fit. I mean, that doesn't mean you should not have salespeople. You must have salespeople, right? Have maybe, like in NetScaler, until we found the product market fit, we had like 4 or 5 sales teams. That's it. And every quarter, I used to visit every one of these places and spend minimum 3 to 4 days with the sales team and the customers to understand, are they getting, because, sitting in HQ, you are in the midst of all the information that is flowing. But if you're sitting remotely in Texas, in New York, or Washington, D.C., or somewhere, Chicago, they don't have access to that information.
Yeah.
Right? So I used to make it a point to go and spend like 2 or 3 days in every one of these locations, just so I understand the pain of the sales team and I understand the pain of the customer, and then bring the feedback into the company to provide the necessary support. So that is what is needed to build that initial success, and then carefully investing to grow to the next level.
Actually, BV, I really love your kind of insights. And also earlier you mentioned about a real indicator of the product market fit is when ordinary salespeople can sell to an ordinary customer. Then probably that's a time you should invest or invest resources to really scale up. You also mentioned about you visit different branch organizations to truly understand the market-facing issue, the pain points of the salespeople, to help you to decide whether it's the right time to scale up or invest. So when you kind of could you go a little bit deeper when you talk to these salespeople, for example, to really assess whether the market or whether your company is truly ready for scaling up or investing in those things? What specific kind of issues you kind of pay attention to when you listen to? Because earlier you also mentioned about the leads. How many leads do you generate? So could you give us a little bit more kind of a details to kind of help you to make judgment whether you should invest or whether it's still too early?
So the simplest way to know that you are ready to actually add another sales team is if the sales guys that you have, the sales team that you have, are extremely busy, and they're getting to a stage where they don't have time to, when you give a new lead to them, they don't have time to process that lead, right? So that's a good sign. Of course, you need to make sure, are they they don't have the time because they are working on things that should have been done by someone else. Then you need to offload that into the corporate or into somebody else who can provide them that support. Because the sales person and the sales technical guy's job is to primarily support the customer, right? He or she should not be spending a lot of cycles on inefficient and back-end kind of stuff. So you need to provide like sales ops support to help these guys to offload all that overheads. And that way, they are very productive and they are constantly either hunting for new customers or new opportunities within the customer, right? So the first step is when the sales team has more leads that they can handle, then I know if I add another sales team over here, I can start making them productive almost immediately. So those are the kind of things. So we call this as the sales heat map. So you look at the data in every one of the regions.
Oh, BV, just for the audience to clarify, also for my students, are you saying the sales hit map?
No, heat map, heat.
Oh, heat map. Oh, okay.
Yeah, think of like if there is a fire going on, then there is a fire, on the map, right? So it's the same way. You map out all your regions and you look at various metrics in those regions. That is number of leads, active leads that you have, right? Number of proof of concepts that is going on, and number of existing customers who are coming back to buy more, right? So you define a number of channel partners that are engaged, what kind of leads these channel partners are giving to you. So today you have all this data and you map this data for each of the regions, and you can tell, like, if I have a sales team, I will have an idea. Typically, they can handle anywhere from 15 to 20 accounts, right? So if I don't have 15 to 20 activities in that heat map, then the existing sales guys themselves can actually do the job. Now, when it starts to get to more than 15 to 20, then things will start falling apart. And that's when you have to inject another sales team.
That's great.
So this is a very mathematical stuff, actually, if you think of it, right? The very, very mathematical stuff. So very analytical, very mathematical, and somebody needs to observe all these things. And if you have a good sales ops kind of a person, that's the role of that sales ops person. If you don't have that, then you need to have your finance guy to map these kind of things. And you as a CEO, you shouldn't be doing this work, but you should be guiding these principles to different people so that they actually watch all these things and present the data to you.
Right. Actually, I love your, I was using today's words, very, very analytical, but also very, very granular, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why this whole attention to details, right?
Yeah, that's very true.
The role that the founder CEO must learn. If the founder CEO doesn't have I didn't have those qualities. I was just an engineer, say software programmer. When you are in that role, you need to have the interest to learn these things rather than, I don't like finance. I don't like operations, right? But as a CEO, you need to know the details of all of these things, and you need to hire the right people to go and execute on that. So you're not micromanaging, but you are ensuring that the wheel is actually spinning properly.
Yeah, I like your point. Yeah, I like your point about the micromanaging and also pay attention to detail. It's a very interesting balance between the two.
Right. Because if you micromanage, you cannot attract the top talent.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, people will leave. Best talents will not join you if you micromanage.
Discussion topic: when to invest to scale up startups, a good indicator.
One of my friends beautifully defined, when do you really start scaling up your sales and marketing organization is when you have found the product market fit. And the definition of the product market fit at that stage, when you start to scale the organization, is when a ordinary salesperson in your organization, right, can sell to an ordinary customer.
Good point.
Not a very technically qualified customer, right? An ordinary customer and an ordinary sales guy, which means he or she should be able to understand your presentation, your case studies, your target market, all of these things. And he or she should know how to present your company, the value proposition, all of that stuff to an ordinary customer who can also understand what your product is doing. If you can get to that stage, that means you have really hit the product market fit, meaning you have really built the product with a great user interface, with easy to install, easy to communicate, and the value proposition is well understood, all of these things. So that means the preparation to get to that stage where you really start to invest in sales and marketing heavily is all these step-by-step aspect of making the product very easy to use, better user experience, better user interface, right? Better management tools, all of these different aspects on the product, and understanding the value proposition and messaging that properly, creating a PowerPoint presentation that tells the story properly, right? All this back-end work, combination of product and product marketing and product management, doing their work properly. And then if you invest in sales and marketing, then your sales cycle will be lot less, your sales productivity will be high, right? And your unit economics really starts to look better.
Discussion topic: how to build startups as acquisition targets.
Are there any kind of lessons or guidance or wisdoms in building startup companies to become attractive acquisition target, and versus kind of going with another path, which is IPO? Do you think there's any difference or any kind of lessons in building these two different type of exits?
Yeah, no, there is a vast difference. There is a vast difference. So when you're building a company for acquisition, then typically what I have seen is entrepreneurs who have deep market knowledge and product knowledge in a certain vertical area. And they know what the gap that exists in the big players.
Big player means
Right.
the big companies, incumbents in
Big
that
companies.
vertical space. Okay.
In that vertical space, yeah. I have a friend who primarily builds products to be acquired, and he enjoys doing that. So he's an expert in the EDA space.
Oh, okay. EDA?
Yeah, that electronic design automation.
Yeah.
The big companies in that are Synopsys, Cadence, Mentor Graphics. So this entrepreneur, he knows precisely from a product technology and a product perspective what is the gap that exists as the market is evolving to the next level. Because in semiconductor design, right, the microns are dropping continuously, and that means the tools need to improve on a continuous basis. And sometimes these big companies don't move fast enough. So he knows that this is where the technology is heading towards, and this is where the gap would be. And I know how to build this. So he builds the company, builds the product, and he gets like 8 or 10 customers. And that is a perfect position for him to go and sell it to one of these 3 companies. So as a matter of fact, he has built 3 companies so far. And each of these companies, is being bought by one of these 3 guys.
Whoa, that's amazing. So just very quickly, kind of try to kind of make sure I understand you. Basically, the starting point, if you try to build an acquisition target, is to understand the pain points of the incumbents in that particular space and understand the trend. Then you basically try to solve the pain points of these large corporations, right?
Exactly.
And also the other thing I want to kind of clarify or get your kind of point is, when you say when this company got about 10 customers, then he tried to kind of sell the startup company. Is that the stage where he got the product market fit?
It's basically no. It's not a complete product market fit. Instead, it is more like the product that I have built is validated, and this is what the big companies want. In fact, they don't want too many customers, right? Because it becomes a headache. It becomes a headache for them. But they want to make sure the technology and the product that you have built is working And the best way to prove that the product is working is if it's working in a customer environment. Rather than me saying, hey, I have this great product, great technology, all that. Instead, if I say, go talk to this customer, go talk to this customer, the customer will tell you what my product is doing.
Discussion topic: acquisition or IPO, right mindset to build startups.
Is there a difference in how you build a company to be acquired, or you want to, go all the way, right? In my case, most companies that I get involved, whether it is the one that I have built myself or the one that I work very closely with, I always tell the entrepreneurs that you have to build the company as if you're going to go all the way IPO. That means the mindset has to be, when you're recruiting a VP of sales, when you're recruiting a VP marketing, when you're recruiting a chief technology officer, whatever that is, right? You have to really be thinking, is this the team that I'm going to have if I'm going to go IPO, right? Or it's okay, if I get a person to help me move from point A to point B, this person may not be the one who's going to be there when I go IPO. But as long as this person moves from A to B or B to C, right? And if the person is not scaling, because some people actually scale along with the company demands, including yourself. Even you need to scale as well. If you're one of those who is not scaling, then you mentally should know, okay, this is the time I've got to bring a new person. Right? So that's from the organization point of view. And because, at the end of the day, the organization is the most important thing to build this into a big company, right? Because that's how things will start falling in place. Like when you have a product market fit, that ordinary sales guy is selling to an ordinary, if you could actually tell your story to the right investors will just pour money into you. And if it's a large market, right, you could potentially exponentially grow in your revenues. And if your fundamentals are right, meaning your gross margins are correct, if your unit economics is right, all of these things is right, then you are well positioned to take the company into a hyperscale growth. Yeah.
Okay. So
but if it so happens, so for example, in case of NetScaler, we were at $60 million run rate, and we were on a path to go IPO, and we get a cold call from Citrix. Hey, we want to come and talk to you to have a strategic partnership here. So the acquisition price was good. And to me, at that time, more than me personally, most of the engineers who had started with the company back in 1998, 7 years had gone by and they had not seen any liquidity at all.
Oh.
And if we were to go IPO, it would have taken a minimum 2 more years for us to get to $100 million revenue. And that means I have to do one more round of funding, which means further dilution and the risk, any market risk. Like, for example, right, in 2008, the whole market collapsed.
Right.
We could not have taken the company public. So I said, hey, I think these people deserve to get some liquidity. And we made a conscious decision, and our VCs were happy with the returns they got. So they said, if you want to do it, go ahead and do it. And that's how we ended up doing it.
Okay. So it's very interesting, BV, actually. On one hand, you clearly kind of explain the difference or uniqueness for startup companies that are very attractive acquisition targets. On the other hand, you talk about for startup companies, when they build, or founders, that when they grow the startup company, they should not kind of bet on just being acquired. They should, kind of thinking about going IPO. So could you kind of explain why for, let's say, founders to think about targeting acquisition is kind of a not very good mindset. Even though there's like some kind of special differences, but why that's not mindset to start with?
Yeah. Personally, in my view,
Mm-hmm.
when you build a great product which has a great traction,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to replicate this because a lot of founders actually think, let me sell this company, make some money, and then I'm going to come back and do another company, and maybe that company I'll take it public, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is not that easy.
Mm-hmm.
So when things have converged, meaning I have the right product, I have the market that needs this product, and I have the right people, and the idea is good, everything is looking good, it's hard to actually come back and replicate. There are very small percentage of founders who have made this thing repeatedly successful. Very small percentage. There are founders, but it's a very small percentage. I mean, I myself, right? I tried next time when I tried after Netscaler, I tried another company called 3Leaf, which could have been a very, very massive company, but a lot of things did not come together. So it is very hard to make these things. So if you are at it, if things are going well, if everything is in your favor, go and build this into a real company. So, but along the way, if an acquisition offer happens to come, you evaluate if that is the right thing to do. And if it is the right thing to do, then go for the acquisition, like how we did for Netscaler. I mean, I told the Citrix CEO, I said, look, your competition is not another company trying to acquire us. I'm not going to go shop around, right? Your competition is, we are on a path to go IPO in 2 years. So the only reason why I'll come to you is because you have a massive customer base, and I have a great product, and I'm interested to make sure my product will reach your massive customer base. And this is exactly what I told the CEO.
Discussion topic: business logic causing VCs to avoid consulting model.
Do you have any kind of preference or try to avoid certain business models that startup company tend to kind of work on? For example, earlier you mentioned about clearly you're not interested in startup companies pursuing consulting type of business. So following that kind of logic, do you have any kind of just a wisdom say, hey, if a startup company is following or using this type of model, business model, then probably it's not very good sign. I'm not that interested, or you prefer certain type of business models. So maybe you can share those kind of thinkings.
What I normally don't take on would be the two types of companies. One is this services consulting companies, and the other one would be consumer-centric companies. No matter how attractive it is, I shy away from taking on these consumer companies, mainly because what I have learned is it may look a little funny, but it's a reality. The companies that I believe are the ones which will pretty much, have failed. And the companies that I did not believe actually took off. So that just tells the consumer, this is the consumer companies, right? The consumer companies that I thought were going to become big failed miserably. And the consumer companies that I did not bet on actually became very successful. That just shows how disconnected I am, right, to the reality of the consumer companies. So having experienced that once or twice just for the sake of it, I decided, hey, this is not my cup of tea. I'm just going to not invest in consumer-centric companies at all. And I'll just focus on where I can add value. So today, the principle in which I invest is I will not write a check for the sake of writing a check. I will write a check only if I can add value. If I cannot add value, I just walk away from it. So everything else, I treat it as a learning experience. So even if it's a new business model, so be it. That's a learning experience. I don't want to get stuck with some old business model and that's the only one that I'm going to operate on. No. Yeah, because these are all changing on a daily basis. Who would have anticipated the revenue model would be, for software companies to become SaaS model, right?
Yeah.
And now we have a company which is based on usage-based model.
Mm.
So the whole revenue for this company is based on usage-based. So actually, the customer benefits a lot from this. Yeah, you pay for what you use rather than you pay in bulk, right? You don't need to.
That's great.
Yeah.
So actually, these are kind of very, very good points. So in other words, actually become very more open, flexible in terms of business model, except consulting type of business model. Why? What's the business logic behind it?
It's what I have seen is this consulting model. The mindset of the people is very different, because in consulting model, what happens is every opportunity that is thrown at you, you say, okay, I can do it. I'll do it. I'll figure out how to throw bodies at this and then get the job done. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's just not a scalable sort of a model. When you try to boil the ocean, I personally feel there is no intellectual challenge in those kind of things. So it's just my personal view. That's the reason as to why I kind of shy away from.
Discussion topic: advice and warning for young Asian entrepreneurs.
Any kind of a unique insights, enduring lessons that helped young, let's say, BV Jagadeesh, if you think that way, that you can share with because we are dealing with a lot of young people who follow, models like you. So do you have any kind of enduring lessons about the building, starting, growing startup companies that you really kind of think is stay with you and you can share with us?
So, one general principle that I follow, and I have watched this across multiple successful people, is this acronym that I follow, what is called as the CPS. CPS. C is consistency, P is perseverance, and S is self-driven.
Self-driven, last one. Okay.
Self-driven, right? So, meaning whatever you do, be consistent with what you do. And disconnect your financial gain to the work that you do, right? Because the responsibility of the work you are doing is independent of your financial status. So if you have made a lot of money in the past, and if you are founding and becoming a CEO of a company today, don't do this company thinking that, hey, I'm already rich, this is not important to me. Because there are other people who are dependent on you. So for example, when we built the first company, right, obviously we did well. And when I was building the second company, especially after 9/11, a lot of people came to me and said, why are you going through this torture? Why don't you just sit on the beach, wait for 3 more years, let the market come back, and then you can come back? I said, no, I'm running this company. I have 80 people who are dependent on what I'm going to do, right? Besides, I believe that we can do something with this thing. So stuck to it and made it happen. And look at today, right? It's $1 billion in business, and it has given jobs for thousands and thousands of people across the globe. So that's the consistency part of it. And the perseverance is, life is always, you will always have ups and downs.
Yeah.
Always. There'll be people who will be saying you cannot do this, right? But you just believe in yourself and keep at it. And third is, nobody should be telling you. Your board should not be telling you. Your investors should not be telling you. It should be self-driven kind of a thing. And I think if you adopt that kind of a mindset, the CPS mindset, you have a greater chance to succeed and build a great company.
Do you think in general public or in like a mass media, any kind of misperceptions or misunderstandings about entrepreneurship, building, starting new business that have been kind of misunderstood or kind of overlooked? But based upon your insight, you think that's not true. Many people should be aware of those kind of misperceptions.
One thing that unfortunately sometimes it happens when few entrepreneurs, right, especially coming from a certain section of the society, if they do wrongful things or unethical things or illegal things, then you kind of get put into that bucket, right? Even if you are working hard, even if you're doing a good job or whatever it is, for a moment, people will start putting lens on you because, hey, maybe you could be similar to that person, right? And this happens more for people like us who are immigrants who have come from certain countries. And if some of your countrymen end up doing things like this somewhere, I have seen the perception on you kind of starts to change for a while. And then, of course, things will start coming back in a normal way. So that's the reality of the situation that we all need to face. And that's why, my request to any entrepreneur is stay truthful, stay honest, right? Don't try to do things that are unethical and crossing the boundaries and doing things that are not legal, because you will get caught. At some point of time, you will get caught. Why put yourself in trouble and put others also in trouble? Just because of greed.
Yeah, I see your point. So there's like collateral damage to even to that particular group of people who are similar to you.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Actually relating to that, just very quickly, because you mentioned about that, do you have any kind of observations or the kind of advice for the Asian entrepreneurs? Because Asian is very wide, kind of diverse groups. But in general, do you have like any comments or observation about the young Asian entrepreneurs?
Well, I think typically a first-time entrepreneur of coming from the Asian background, generally it's hard to convince to raise the money. So don't get disheartened by that, right? Go figure out various avenues of some small money that you can raise, or do something, right? Or put your savings and something like that, and use your cash wisely and go and pursue your dream. So first time, it's always tough. Always. And especially so because you're an Asian. And that becomes a challenge. And luckily, a lot of things have improved today compared to when we started the business back in the early 90s. But still, first-time entrepreneurs will always have this challenge. But go figure out, right, how to work around. Because the good news is, in the Asian ecosystem, there is a lot more people who are willing to fund you today, at least the seed investment, the early investments and stuff like that, and leverage that and build that into the mainstream based on building a successful product and successful market. Because once the mainstream VCs see you penetrating into the main market, then they don't care at that point of time. Right? They don't care whether you are an Asian, whether you are, some other country person. They don't really care. All that they care is, do you have a product that resonates to the customer, and is the customer appreciating your product and writing a check? Can this be multiplied into something big? Yeah, sure. Let's be part of it.
Thank you for watching.